Welcome to the very first episode of the Rugby Wire. I'm your host, Brian Matamba. Here we're going to talk everything about rugby in Zimbabwe. And this show is not about your pub talk, your social media. We talk about real issues and dig into real matters. This is the Rugby Wire. Today we're going to dive into a hot topic, hotter than the scrum in July. We're going to talk about the recent suspension of the Zimbabwe Rugby Board by the SRC and the recent appointment of the IMC, which will take over the running of the beautiful game of rugby in Zimbabwe. Today we've got a guest in studio, well known in the cricket circle, but also good in rugby. I've got your guest, Brian Goredema. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian Matamba, for inviting me.
Before we get into the topic of the day, here's an inset.
The Rugby Africa Cup finals in Uganda was extraordinary. It's now over, and I continue to congratulate Uganda and Godwin, the president, for an extraordinary tournament. But now our minds and heart and eyes shift. We're now thinking 2027 already, which is the Rugby World Cup in Australia. And we have Zimbabwe, who have rightly qualified with an extraordinary display. We saw it last year, coming into this year and winning the final. But the fact of the matter is, we now need to prepare Zimbabwe for that tournament. And the preparation comes threefold. World Rugby, thankfully, is prepared to support the winners, i.e. the preparation. And that means that the boys themselves in Zimbabwe, those who are playing abroad and those who are in Zim, those who are emerging, have got to be brought together by their extraordinary coach. Peter Bernardi and his squad of technical expertise will now be helped along by World Rugby to ensure that the players are well prepared. Sport is big business. You hear me saying it all the time, which means that Zimbabwe themselves have got to raise money. World Rugby themselves are going to come to the party. Matches are going to have to be played. Internally, they're going to have to change the training methods to make sure that the strength conditioning of the players changes, nutrition, Medicare, and then getting players from different parts of the world to play. Africa's problem is not the talent, it's the fact that they're not playing enough competitive matches at a high level to be able to play in the World Cup and to compete. How do we get Zimbabwe to that point? Namibia have been there virtually every World Cup, and I'm hoping they're going to win the repechage in Dubai in November. Tough ask because of the amount of money that is required. But what would it be for two African nations to get through? The problems that we have, though, is that we have also got to look and make sure that the internal governance of these countries is 100%. What you can do when you're just playing in your region is different from what you've got to do when you're playing globally. In order for us to support financially, we have to do an audit, which is what we're currently doing. And what I'd like to say is that we're here to support Zimbabwe. We'll make sure that through the audit, that Rugby Africa also provides the structures, the systems. Africa in general needs to review the way that it looks at itself moving forward. We have to look at eventually creating a common constitution, something that works for all of us, so that we ensure that we have good continuity, we do not have internal problems, confidence is high, sponsorship is such that they want to invest, they want to put their money. And sponsorship comes from companies, comes from the corporate world, comes from, in the case of Zimbabwe, they have a wonderful trust system. Lindsay and her people have put together an extraordinary helping system to make sure it works. But World Rugby also must have confidence in the internal structures of all countries before it's going to divest any money. Sport is big business, and money likes to go where there is peace and quiet, not where there is chaos. Africa in general, like the rest of the world, must ensure that its house is in order. And we need to make sure that all the boxes are ticked. And we will do that. In Zimbabwe, I've had great exchanges with the ministry, and I have great respect for the presidency. And I'm hoping that working with them, with the regulators, with those who are the stakeholders, will work together to ensure that Zimbabwe goes through to Rugby World Cup in an excellent state. I have high hopes. I love the country. I do love Zimbabwe. and I hope that they do well.
Celebration for the Sables of Zimbabwe, champions of the Rugby Africa Cup.
Brian, what do you think was said and what was not said in the video?
I think a lot was said that was not said. So I think most people missed what was not said, though it was said, by looking at the obvious. So if you look at that video, so he talks about, so he starts from far, where he talked about how the Sables were so good in the two tournaments. You know, he's building his case. And then he talks about the issue of stability, why it is important in a rugby year, why the leadership is very important. So now we look at leadership. So it tells you that Rugby Africa, World Rugby, Zimbabwe government had a consultative meeting at the various levels, and then they said the best outcome for where you guys want to go to, because already for me it's said that you're talking about boardroom squabbles when we have qualified for the World Cup after over 3 decades. So we're talking about the administrators, you're talking about the players, when the players are the product, Brian. So Herbert in his wisdom, government in their wisdom, World Rugby in their wisdom, they said, you know what, let's step in and let's put all this mess behind. So what I'm just saying, in street lingo, so why I'm saying that, it's also important for Herbert having in his first team, having a new team to qualify for the World Cup other than Namibia. And what if Namibia then qualifies through the repechage? I know it's difficult, but it's doable. So then you've got 2 teams under your watch as Rugby Africa chairman, and then you've brought stability to Zimbabwe Rugby. So all those things, if you look at them, they add up to what he wants to see. What is legacy. Exactly. So the suspicions were mentioned, but people did not listen. That we are coming for you. It's there in the video. That and then also that there's no issue of Zimbabwe failing to go to the World Cup, because all those boxes were ticked behind the scenes. So that's my take from that clip.
But still on the topic, what do you think about the composition of the IMC? What do you think, what's in it for the gamer in Zimbabwe?
I think the IMC is a very important mechanism that then stopped all the infighting that was there. And I think because now Herbert is was in Zimbabwe, he came for the Sables lunch or whatever with the president. So I think there's some further briefings again that took place now that the IMC is in place now, reading the Riot Act on what World Rugby and Rugby Africa expects from the IMC. So IMC, they're bringing a very strong commercial combination. If you look at everyone that is there, we've got lawyers, we are safeguarding all the legal pitfalls. We have got Petty Janda, the junior, who's a businessman in his own right, and I think he's a chartered accountant.
Yeah, he's a chartered accountant, and he's got a master's in business administration.
Yeah, and see, and then you look at the lady from Nedbank, one of the best performing banks, who's coming on the marketing side. Then we have got another one coming to unlock the commercial value of the Sables in a World Cup cycle. So there we are good. Then we've got the technical side headed by Jose Murambiwa, but sort of short on the issue where I want to see more former Sable players being involved at this level, like what we saw in football, where we had Rose Mgadza and Lincoln Mtaza, who were former footballers, who were a part of that normalization committee after the Zifa debacle. So it's the same thing, different ends. Then my challenge now is that the same board members have gone back to their provinces, and I don't know what the future holds, but as we speak, that's where you get issues. So I hope this IMC that you've asked me about, that they'll be able to solve issues, not just at that level where they're formulating the commercial entity of ZRU, but also the governance issues that are down there in the provinces. so that when whoever then is appointed and after a new constitution has been made, that the issues that are there will not rear their ugly head at another time.
Do you think we need a new constitution, given that the president of Rugby Africa, Herbert Mensah, mentioned about we now need a constitution which is Africa-driven, which can be used across Africa?
I think that's why I said Mensah, because already they're talking of a homogeneous constitution. The one in Zimbabwe must be the one in Namibia, one in Cote d'Ivoire, one in Tunisia. So Zimbabwe is now being guinea-pigged because the rugby people invited government to their affairs. The rugby people invited Rugby Africa into their affairs. So now it's now an issue where we're trying to comply with every directive that is coming from every quarter. Because remember, these guys have paid our boys suspension. Imagine the heartbreak that would have come if we suspended in all the work that Pete Bernard and the boys have put just to qualify, the work that the Sebos Trust, the money in an environment where money is difficult to get in this country, but the resources that they put were much more than what even some sponsors put through. So it tells you about the work that was put through. So then if the constitution is fit for a purpose, because what we have is a political constitution, in my view, where you get the board members only active when someone wants to be elected. After that, they disappear. So I hope the one that is being proposed after the consultation with all the stakeholders will be able to take Zimbabwe rugby forward.
All right, this is the Rugby Wire, where we talk everything rugby. Please like our Facebook page, subscribe our YouTube channel. We'll be talking about rugby, and we've got more exclusive coming in the way. So please stay tuned. Brian, as we continue on this topic, you wrote quite an explosive thread on X where you talked about governance issues, the history, and where we are as a country in rugby. The cancer that has eaten Zimbabwe rugby from the past up to now. Can you unpack what that thread you really meant? And some quarters were saying we had this in Zifa, we had this in Zim cricket, but that thread was really explosive.
Yes, Brian. Sometimes as a journalist, you want to simplify how people consume news. So the thread part was trying to, make sure that all the news, all my thoughts are in one place, but where people are, people talk on X, and that created a platform called Let's Talk Rugby on Facebook. So the funny thing, I actually loved my last thread that I did about what was coming. It didn't have many likes, but it was shared widely on the various forms that are not even represented, and because I knew what was coming, that the rugby people invited government because of the issue of governance. So if you go back to the years of Bruce Hobson, then you go, so Bruce left rugby in a mess. Even the books, there were issues there. Then Timber came and cleaned up that, and then because of this stupid infighting within our rugby, people want to remain with the identity of their rugby clubs, forgetting the bigger thing that is called Zimbabwe rugby. For when we qualified, our sports clubs did not qualify, Old Georges did not qualify, but Zimbabwe rugby qualified for the World Cup. So the governance issue is thing that I've always hammered on. So successive ZRU presidents, they think that they are bigger than the constitution. They think that they are bigger than the rugby. So we want to separate what the executive committee is supposed to do and what the board is supposed to do in terms of policy. So the board creates the policy, and the EXCO, which is the secretariat, must then implement the policy of the board. So sometimes people need to understand that they are not running this game on behalf of their family. It's a national game. They're doing it on behalf of stakeholders. So when I was writing, I was looking at the provincial levels. That's where all this rubbish begins. Because I don't know how many provincial boards have held annual general meetings, have held the periodical meetings that their constitution informs them to. So the same person who does not observe corporate governance in Masvingo, in Harare, in Mash East, then comes and sits on the board of the Zimbabwe Rugby Union. And if he's elected, he becomes the president. Then he comes with a tuck shop mentality. Then he wants to run ZRU like a tuck shop. It's not a tuck shop. This is a national association where people have got vested interest. There's a child in Kadoma, in Masvingo, who one day wants to don the green and white of the Sebos. They all want to do that. So governance does not start at the top. It's rotten at the bottom. So we're only seeing the rotten things now coming to the fore at the national level. So I hope there'll be governance expert on that IMC who will try and ask some of us to understand where the road begins. Because I'm telling you, even if we create a good constitution, but if people haven't learned, remember, a constitution is a document.
Yes.
So we had one document and people still ignored, even flawed as it was, they still ignored.
Listen to it, yes.
You see now, because we've got this superhero mentality where we are still thinking about our favorites. People say, so-and-so is a better devil. A devil is a devil. We don't want devils. Yes. We want servants of the game. So if you are a servant, then you understand the parameters, that these are the parameters that I need to live, because the tenets of the constitution dictates that I do A, B, C, D. You can't have money being transferred to people's personal account during ZRU business. Those are basic corporate governance issues. Even in accounting, I'm not an accountant. So all those safeguards are there in the constitution. But because people haven't learned how to respect governance issues. Remember 2017, Temba Sibanda and Chikanyara's board. Nyararai Sibanda. Yes. Again, it was governance issues. So I remember when I was at the press, I asked the Commissioner Shingai for why they are now intervening now on governance issues. Then I said, people are arguing that you guys are grandstanding because you allowed the governance issues to pile up and pile up. So the response from SRC was, we had to find a way around the hurdle so that there was no suspension on the ZRU board. Because if we're just going to be trigger happy, then we're going to create another chaos. But we have been observing, so we consulted behind the scenes with World Rugby and Rugby Africa. So that's when we came to the conclusion that we want to clean up our rugby, and they gave us the go-ahead and with no suspension. So my issue on those threads, for me, anyone who comes, Brian, to lead our rugby understands governance, corporate governance, that you are not running a tuck shop. If you want one, please build one wherever you can, and you can run your tuck shop. But this is the game.
Is a national asset.
Even that issue of the ladies, yes. It shows you that people think that they are bigger than the game. The way the ladies disabled were treated, that level of arrogance.
That's what brought us here now.
Yes, and hopefully this time we'll be able to clean up the mess in the rugby. Because 2017 we failed to clean up, and we are here today. And you see, the other issue with the previous constitution was that so somebody's elected, and you have people from ZOC telling you that your constitution is flawed. Can you guys try and create something? But because I'm elected, I'm just thinking about myself. I don't care about what happens after I leave office. So now I'm just happy that we've come to a reset, and hopefully this reset will not only help us to go and do well at the Rugby World Cup, but then begin the process of Zimbabwe dominating African rugby outside South Africa and growing the game to the levels that when some of us started liking the game in the early 90s, when we're still in primary, then high school, has allowed us today to also become voices for rugby.
All right, on the final topic of today, what do you think, what's in store for the game? Let's move away from the boardroom squabbles. We want to talk about the actual rugby, the actual product, the reason why we love this beautiful game. In the short term and in the long term, what do you think is in store with the Zim rugby?
I think in the short term, let's remember that our rugby is amateur. So with the way that SRC did their thing, they didn't do their homework properly. So I was once involved with rugby in Marxist, where it's money that is coming from our pockets. You're volunteering, you're putting money. There has to be a plan from the IMC to make sure that there are more rugby clubs. I don't know how. Mashingo, we want to see 4 or 5 rugby clubs. By Central, there's no rugby clubs. Though I heard that there were elections, I don't know which rugby clubs voted.
The ghost province we always talk about.
Yes. Mat North, Mat South. So in the short term, I think unless if somebody is very clever in courts, goes to the courts, I think this thing is signed, sealed, and delivered. The Sebos went to see the president. Herbert Mensah was present at that function. So that thing is finished, and now it's an issue now of starting to put the small steps towards. So in the short term, I hope the IMC will create those subcommittees that will help in the various issues that needs attention within our rugby. For the local provinces, I think we'll still see the 7th season where rugby played, the Summer 7 series happening. And then I hope the issue of the CEO of Zimbabwe Rugby will also be sorted, because some of the mess that happened there, he was there. I'm not saying, because I can't prove anything, but I'm saying is the issues that need to be sorted. So when ZIFA Normalization Committee took over, they then made sure that some of the employees had their contract terminated, and then they put a CEO who was fit for a purpose of the IMC based on their briefing. So for example, you get a good CEO now. By the time that we go for election, that person understands what is needed by the corporate governance, and also you would have rubbed shoulders long enough with the IMC, with these reputable men and women who are coming from the corporate world. So by then the blueprint would be set. So hopefully those things, those juggles, I think we're going to see a game of chess and the pieces being put together in the first 6 months. And then in the long term now, some issues are going to start bursting through. What do I mean by that? Because according to SRC, there must be elections before we go to the World Cup. So the nights of long nights will begin again.
Round 2.
So we don't know what the Constitution will say about the previous board members. Will they be allowed to run for elections under the new Constitution? That I don't know. But I know my ambitious rugby people. Brian Goredema, you're going to Australia as the president of Zimbabwe Rugby. Telling my wife, it sounds so good, eh?
You're going down and under.
Down under. I did not even do anything. It was other people who worked hard, and I'm just going there. So it's then, I don't know how they're going to do it. Of course, I've got an idea, but I can't share it now. But I'm just saying, hopefully, we won't be back to this chaos. And again, the Constitution will also dictate the level of chaos if ever there's going to be chaos again. Because I know that we won't be having 17 affiliates voting, whether they're going to be more or
the ghost voters.
You see, so I think it's going to be something new. But above all, we are going to start enjoying playing Tier 2 nations, your Portugals, your Romania. So all those suckers for Test rugby. I think we're going to have more Test rugby in the coming year, and even end of year, those tours that have been organized already. So I'll be happy if the conversations are going to be about rugby.
Not about the board.
Not about the board, not about the politics. And then, so the short term is laying the foundation, the constitution, the consultations. Then the long term is, I hope World Rugby will give us a waiver to allow the IMC and waiver to go to the World Cup Then we have the elections after the World Cup. So those are my thoughts on of the short term and the long term outlook of Zimbabwe Rugby Union.
And long term, just to wrap it up, what do you think? We've not had a national league for a while now, for more than, could be close to 15 years now. What do you think on that long term? Given we've qualified, yes, this method works, but long term it's not sustainable.
Yeah, definitely. What you want is that we go back to the team that won the Rugby Africa Cup 2012.
When we had a certain beer brand sponsored in the National League.
Yes, yeah. Yes, when we had Delta, yeah. Maybe they won't come and sponsor your show, who knows. But when it was built on the strength of the domestic National League. So a strong domestic league and even the brand of rugby, I enjoyed coming to watch rugby. To be honest, these days, maybe I only watch the Harare Derby or the Harareans OH. I'm being honest, because the level of rugby for me has gone down. Because rugby is part of the entertainment industry. We are here to be entertained when you come to a stadium. So entertainment, even a low-scoring match, you begin to see how the set pieces were done, how this team was good in defense. Again, that's entertainment. People always think that a high-scoring game is what we call... No. So you're looking at the tactical acumen of both coaches. So I hope the National League will come through. So hopefully the IMC, in trying to unlock the commercial value of Zimbabwe Rugby Union, will then understand that Zimbabwe Rugby Union must run a national league because they outsourced the league to Harare province.
I remember.
So there was then now people now thinking that because the Harare province
is one of the most strongest provinces.
Yes, and then because this one is running, you might end up now having ambitions to be the Zimbabwe Rugby Union. So people are so petty, but it functioned well, and I would say I salute Nodika and his team, what they did. They kept rugby alive in this country. And for us now to enjoy this qualification is because about men and women who sacrificed back then. Remember, Zimbabwe had gone down to Group 1C. Exactly. They were playing the likes of Botswana. And then they came up, won the Rugby Africa Cup. So now we are here. Australia, we're going. But like what you are asking, that National Rugby League must be revived so that strength on strength, the people in Matabeleland will be able to test themselves against from Manikali and from Harare and whoever.
I think those who really tuned in, I think you really heard Brian Goredema. Thanks for having you on the show.
Thanks. Hopefully it will be one of the many invitations to come my way.
Hopefully we'll have you again sometime later in the show. This was quite an explosive show. We really went into lengths, everything that has been happening within Zim Rugby. I hope you enjoyed this show. Please like our page on Facebook, subscribe our YouTube channel, and tune in next time because we have more exclusives coming in your way. This is going to be the staple food of Zimbabwe Rugby. Thanks for having me. I'm your host, Brian Matamba. This is The Rugby Wire.